if you're new or an affiliate. If you're partnered, write 8,000 because everyone who watches you will give them transcoding options. People have said Twitch can handle up to an 8,500 bitrate and beyond, but it's not safe to put yourself on the edge of the limit because when you're streaming, the bitrate constantly fluctuates around the value you've chosen, and if it goes too high, you'll experience some serious problems. I once accidentally streamed at 9 or 10,000, and when I did, viewers who reloaded the page due to the buffering could no longer access my stream at all. I've also heard if you have your bitrate too high, Twitch will automatically cap your stream to 6,000 of using your chosen value. Therefore, the safest highest value in my opinion is 8,000. And you have to remember, audio bitrate is added onto the overall bitrate. So if you write 8,000 in the video and combine it with the highest audio bitrate Twitch allows, which is 320, it'll be 8,320.
Yo, what's good?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Hey, listen, I had a quick question. I'm having like that error where you like rename a script and then you rename the class, and then it's like, oh, I can't find it. I can't find the class. Are you sure they're named the same? And I think that deleting a library folder would like take too long.
hmm
So I was wondering, do you think there would be any issue if I delete the script assemblies folder and then with Unity recompile it?
So let me just double check. So you're getting in where you can't find a class, and it's like a lot. You're getting like a lot of errors for it.
No, no. Basically, I renamed a class. I renamed the script and the class within the script is Savannah behavior. And I got the error can't add script component player menu UI because the script class cannot be found. Make sure there are no compile errors and that the file name and class name match. And I think that's because the meta file or whatever has not been updated, and I refreshed and re-imported it, and it's still like not working. And I've had this happen in the past, and deleting the library folder and having Unity just like recompile it works.
Yeah.
But that would take like I just want to make sure I wouldn't be breaking anything by doing that.
You definitely don't. We've done it a couple times. You won't be breaking anything by doing that. It is just annoying because it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
I haven't really. I can't remember the last time if I've deleted the script assemblies file. I think I probably have, or folder. I probably have, and it's probably fine. But the safest option is probably just the library. Like, you know, delete it, reopen Unity, grab some coffee for like 30 minutes, take a break, and then let it do its thing. It sucks, but it usually is the easiest.
Yeah, and it would be fine, but it's like the script that makes the whole UI work.
Right.
So it's like nothing I can. It's like the top layer. But okay, sounds good. I just want to make sure there's nothing that has to be like manually compiled or something like that.
Nah, you should be good.
All right. How are you doing?
Doing good. Doing good.
How are you doing?
Doing good. Doing good. Whole addressables issue was actually a little less annoying than I once thought. I mean, since we like walked through it, if it kind of goes the way I think it will, then it actually kind of should be fine. And it kind of makes things a little bit simpler because we're just not really. We don't like if we were gonna do it on demand, we would have to like kind of constantly worry about what you don't have versus other players, and like whenever a new player joins the lobby, we gotta like check their inventory, and it's like a lot of work for effectively just keeping your game like a tiny bit smaller, even when a lot of our assets are small to begin with. And like once you stream the asset to begin with, it's commonplace to keep it on the disk for like a long ass time. It's only usually after like, I don't know, like 150 days of a player not playing the game, they might clear the cache on the disk. So like ideally we're not in that position, and if we are, then we just delete the cache, and then whenever they log in again, we give it back to them. You know, it's not a huge deal. So it'll actually be pretty straightforward. Managing addressables is always fun. That's like more of a just like bundle sizes and like object pooling and like how much we can put into memory and all that stuff is more the interesting thing. But the shitty part is, so I'm doing all this work about addressables to make sure that you don't drop frames when you spawn something and everything like that. But there's a critical flaw to do with Vulkan, the graphics API for the Quest, and how Unity treats shader keywords. They call it shader compilation. So when you this was something I found out just from experience, like probably at the beginning of the year. And then I talked to some of the engineers at Meta about it in March. And so essentially the problem is that when you load something for the first time, like a game object, you know, you got to load all the stuff, and it's all got to like get loaded into memory, right?
Right.
The object data, like the dependencies, the mesh, whatever, right? But one of the components of that is the material, right? Like the material. And what a material is really under the hood is it's a bunch of shader code that the engine looks at and the renderer interprets. And the easiest way to think about a shader is just like a bunch of labels that tell the renderer to do certain things on the mesh, and maybe some special instructions. But the labels are called keywords. They're essentially like a good example is like a shadow caster is a keyword. It basically tells, or stereoscopy is a keyword. It tells the shader to like render this in an instanced like way on two lenses, or it tells the shader to cast a shadow. Those have to be compiled, but they are only usually ever compiled at runtime. Basically like the Unity by default compiles these shaders at runtime. It's why sometimes you can seem like you're doing all this work to like make an asset spawn like with no drop in frames, but then it still drops frames, and you're like, what's going on? And it's because the one thing that is holding up the process is the shader compilation, which is often very expensive. And so to get around this, Unity and engines like Unreal, they'll have basically things called like shader caching or preloading of shaders, where you can create like a shader trace file, which just like is all the shaders that are in your game. And then you can pre-warm them, basically. And pre-warming is where you'll preload them into memory. So that when an object gets instantiated, like it's like, oh, okay, I don't need to compile these shaders. I can see that it's this one, so I'm gonna just it's a lot like object pooling but for shaders. The problem with Vulkan is that it doesn't listen to that. So the Unity and Unity 6 even have these APIs called graphic state collection and graphic state tracing and all that stuff, which is this laborious process where you basically have to like record your game while playing it, so that the engine can detect all the shaders that have been loaded in your game, and then it creates what's called a graphic state file, which is a hilarious file to look at. And you basically can use this API that Unity has, where it's like on the launch of your game, you could reference the file and then say graphic state.prewarm, and then that is all. It just shows all the keywords in a big old text file and then compiles all those. The shitty part is that Vulkan will compile all those things into memory on device, and then when you instantiate it, it'll just compile again. It'll just disregard that whole thing, and it'll just say, fuck it, I'm doing it again. And so it prioritizes and enforces compilation at the first instantiation of an object. So like when you instantiate a shader for the first time, for the very, very, very first time, you'll get that hitch. Subsequent spawns, it'll be buttery smooth because that shader's now been compiled into memory, right? But it's the very first one. But that's a big fucking problem, especially when you have a lot of materials with a lot of different keywords. Even if it's like the same base material, the fact that it's got a different texture or something like that, or like a different setting, means a whole new set of, compilations, basically. And so the way that we will probably have to get around it, I'm hoping to God, because the guys at Meta were like pissed off about this hot cache issue too. And they may have an experimental thing that we could use. They may or may not, but I'm assuming they won't. And if they won't, what we'll have to do is on like the first load of the game, you have to basically create a camera, and like while there's like a loading screen happening or something, like on the first launch of the game, you instantiate a cube with every material that's in the game on it. So you like spawn like 400 cubes, like one after the other, like boom, 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 boom. And you try and do your best to not crash the game in the process. So it's like this fine balance of like, you have to sort of instantiate these objects and compile these shaders, but if you do it too aggressively, you're just going to crash the game. And it fucking sucks.
And every time you spawn a cube, you basically tell Vulcan, take a picture of that and remember that.
Yeah.
You dumb idiot. Why would Vulcan like have the I guess the ability to read like one of the giant, what was that, like big file?
Graphic state collection, yeah.
Why would it have the ability to read it but not use it?
It's, I think, some bug essentially, because Vulcan is not meta, right? It's a bug essentially, because Vulcan is not meta, right? It's an Android. I'm pretty sure it's Android, or maybe it's Qualcomm. I can't remember who makes Vulcan. It's just a third-party graphics API that probably just has this discontinuity where graphics tracing and graphic state collections and stuff like that is a relatively new thing, and pre-warming shaders in Unity is a relatively new thing. It's like an invention of the past 3 years or something like that. And prior to this, it was somewhat commonplace to do the like hidden cube method, basically. But you often had the luxury of having devices that were just a little bit more powerful to where you could kind of do it in the background. So you could like, a player could be like walking through an area and you could like compile shaders like in the, while they were a little bit more powerful to where you could kind of do it in the background. So you could like walking through an area and you could like compile shaders playing to some extent. It's also a synchronous process, so there's no way to make it async, so it's gonna block the main thread until it's done. And so we could do all this amazing work on like addressables and object pooling and like all this memory management and bundling, and get fucked on shader compilation. And so that's why it's disheartening, because I still know that we have to like solve that issue in a way that's scalable, but we will. I mean, we know what we have to do, it just makes me chuckle when because I did addressables once, and this is the second time we're doing it, and like revisiting it, I just remember that it's like, yeah, it just seems like, we're doing all this like cool shit and like being all optimal and fucking, and then we're just getting pissed on at the very end because like Unity's or the device isn't going to cooperate. So yeah, it really does suck. And also, once a shader is compiled into memory, there's really no way to get it out. It's like an unpredictable thing. Like sometimes you'll get a shader that's compiled into memory that persists after the application has been like quit. So like sometimes you'll get that's why it's a really difficult issue to spot unless you profile it, because if you're playing the game on device multiple times and you're testing, you may have one playthrough where like you're just stuttering on the first spawn every time, and then you'll like quit the game, come back after like 20 minutes, and then play again, and it'll be like buttery smooth, and you're like, wait, what's going on? Like, is it some script thing? Do I have like some loop that's like going nuts? And it is just like you're like trying to figure it out essentially, and it's only like when you go like kind of deep and do a deep profile that you'll see that like occasionally it's this graphics compilation that's hanging the process, and it's because the shaders sometimes like they get like sort of released from memory like in a very like weirdly inconsistent way. It all has to do with like the whatever's going on under the hood on the device and its relationship with Vulkan. So, like, what we know for a fact is that while you're playing the game, you know, the shaders persist at the very least. But so like we can as long as we can reliably load them on each play session, we'll be fine.
Right.
An example is that you'll probably know is like you know when you launch like I don't know Valorant or Apex in play session, we'll be fine.
Right.
An example is that you'll probably know is like you know when you launch like sometimes you'll get like a thing at the bottom telling shaders.
Yep.
That's essentially what that game is doing. It's pre-compiling all these shaders so that your performance is good.
I see.
Yeah, but it's
that
yeah.
that works with like what DirectX or something.
Right. It's a way. Yeah. So in like DirectX and like Unreal does this generally a lot better too. Like their engine has a better ecosystem for just graphics.
Yeah.
Well, it's shitty in some ways, but in other ways it actually apparently handles this issue quite well, and so it allows you to kind of like get all your shit going. So yeah.
That's funny, dude. And of course, Meta Request is built to work with Vulkan, and that's the most stable and permanent option.
Yep. Yeah. So
It seems like it would be. Sorry, go.
No, you're good. You're good.
I was just gonna say, you said that this is something that's come about in the last 3 years. This whole idea of pre-compiling shaders. I feel like this would be something that would have been useful like 10 years ago too. No, like was there any like particular technical limitation?
No, it's been around for a very long time. Don't get me wrong. I was more referring to specifically like with Unity. So like people have been doing this forever, right? Since shaders have really existed, because it is such a heavy process.
Right.
And so it's but people have done it in different ways. You know, people have done it on the command line. People have done it like in weird sort of creative ways. But like back in the day when it was more common to make an engine for yourself rather than use one, it was very, very common for people to like make sure that there was a way to pre-warm like whatever shaders they were using. Yeah, so it's a funny issue.
While we're on the topic of shaders, yesterday I worked for a couple hours on, like, because we're doing the hologram thing for UI, right? And I was like, we need post-processing for this to look sick. And so I looked into how to apply post-processing to just one layer, and it's like pretty straightforward in like flat Unity, but in VR it's like a big problem because it just writes everything to the same frame buffer, so camera stacks and everything don't work like they should. And like 3 months ago, or maybe like a few months ago, this like Unity employee came out with this like shader that basically like pops your frame like before like the rest of the like it pops one of the earlier passes when it's drawing the scene, and then you apply your shader effects, or you apply all your effects and everything, and then you can apply like post-processing to just one layer because you've popped like the base layer, and then blend it later on. And I got in the like draw process. I got super excited about that, and I implemented it, and it still runs like shit. So
Yeah, it's a tough problem, dude. It's because there's also the difference between stereo multi-view and single pass instanced, right? So,
right,
that like post-processing is probably a little easier when it's multi-view because you could just have true stereoscopy, which is just two render textures, and you just apply it to each of them, right? But when it's instanced, it's like it's a totally different ballgame, and it's like and that's where a lot of these effects get fucked up because there's like no real screen space anymore. It's kind of like this like they get smashed together. So like I think I wouldn't be surprised that even if you did get even if you did get like something to like really visualize like that, you might get like artifacts like all over the place, right? Like ghosting and smear frames and so
it seemed like it was working pretty cleanly,
mm-hmm.
but I just didn't have enough frames to even see if that was
right
the case.
because it was so heavy, basically.
Yeah, even just on like flat, and it might have been because of the hologram shader,
Mm-hmm.
which I mean it's already pretty heavy because it's calculating like all the transparency for like each pixel. But yeah, I'll have to see. I'll have to see.
Yeah, so I mean, what I would worst case scenario if we don't get like a bit of post processing into the game, I'm not necessarily gonna lose sleep over it, because I think we have a lot that we've gotten from the game purely from the foundational side of things.
Mhm.
So something that might be worth trying is if you feel like you're not getting where you want to go with post-processing, is trying to see how much you could get similarly from the shader, or like from a unique shader. Because at the end of the day, like, I think especially in standalone VR, getting something 80 to 90% the way there is almost like getting it 200% of the way there. Like,
Oh yeah, when the standard is 0%.
right. And especially when it comes to like, if you can think about things a little bit like abstract, like kind of removed from the actual visual and just think about what you're trying to get the player to feel. I think you can really like, you can get a lot of value on little things that you do.
Yeah.
Like even something as dumb as like, I don't know, like a cheap particle system that just looks a little bit different, you know, like sometimes that shit can go wild. There's a great example of this is the what's the app, it's like the paint, a great example of this is the what's the app, it's like the paint, fuck. To look at it. It's called Theater Elsewhere. That's it. Theater Elsewhere is an app on the Quest that uses the that artists use the is it Quibi? No, that's not the right fucking thing. It's whatever that 3D paint software is, where you can create basically just like 3D sort of sculptures, and they make these scenes that you can kind of just sit in, basically, and they're sort of like best way to describe it is like 3D paintings and stuff like that. And all they're really using is a single color shader, more or less, and very, 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 very basic like rigging. And the amount of atmosphere that they're able to convey off of color theory, very, 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 very basic like rigging. The amount of atmosphere that they're of color theory is insane. Like, it's literally more or less just like these guys going in and painting an environment. Like, if they want it to feel dark and gloomy, it's really blue. Like, they just blew the whole thing out, and they sort of make it really monochrome, and maybe they'll splash like yellows around to create like that sort of cozy lighting. But it's all just color. And I think our game right now has a lot of competing palettes that can sort of sometimes wash just into like a sort of standard like flat view. But I think if we really wanted to, a way that I think we could apply a huge amount of that feeling that it is almost post-processing but it isn't, is if we paid more attention to how we can fake things like lighting and effects both in the environment and on the player just off of like color, and like where we put saturation and where you desaturate and where you apply that contrast. Like we can, and that can be either improving the shader or adding like more components to the shader, because it's fundamentally quite simple at the moment. It can be applying for instance, like let's say the hologram shader could be, we could make the avatar shader something that actually receives point lighting or like emission. Like, you can make it like receive emission and change color, and only the hologram applies that to the player. Right, so like everything else in the game is more or less flat. It doesn't really seem like it gets lit up, but your arms and your hands and stuff are getting like lit by these like holograms, right?
Yeah.
And then like something as simple as just a little effect, so like particle effect or something to give that hologram like a little bit of dynamism. Suddenly, to the effect is like all the way sold, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if like we didn't have access to things like bloom and chromatic aberration and lens flare and stuff like that, that could spice that up in a traditional sense.
Right. No, I think you're 100% right. And things like, I don't know, particle like line rendering, to like make those hologram lines. It really is a lot you can do with just the shuriken system. So that, but I was talking to Kevin, and it's like, I want to do this, looking to do that. I'm like, let's get functionality down first. That's a good point. So
yeah,
that's what my goal is for tomorrow. Have something that you guys can just start using.
Sure.
We'll be there soon once my library's folder compiles. How are you, KT?
You good? Chilling. Want to check on you guys. I've not heard people call me Kevin in a while. That's great.
Yeah, we just sort of co-opted KT and started calling him KT. I don't even know if that was a bad thing,
Yeah, that's my Mahoney's invention.
Yeah.
They started calling me KT in his class. I was like, yeah, that sounds right.
It's like for 3v3. Where are you guys working?
I could be down in like 30 minutes. I'm gonna fix this addressables thing, and then I'm just checking some bundle sizes, and then I'm there.
Before that,
Yes.
work.
Oh, yes, we need to have a conversation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Let's talk. So, want to get some clarification on the setup. For that.
Yes. Wait, shit.
Oh,
Damn it.
I bet it's this script, right? Vehicle customization manager. That's where all the part shit happens when they get attached. So, I was looking at this. Try parent part, and then you add the part,
Yep.
and that's here. Attached
Yeah.
part,
Yeah.
and the actual data
Yep.
of adding the part data to the vehicle data. Where is that?
Go lower. Lower. Wait, a little higher. Right there, where it says model.parts.add new part
Yes.
model. That's it.
Gotcha. Okay. Parts, add. Let me look at that.
No, that's a norm core function
Oh.
because it's a real-time set. So a real-time set is a set of
Oh,
models.
I see.
Yeah.
Add like this element too.
Yeah.
But then after you add it though,
Yep.
the actual, so the vehicle scriptable object has name, prefab. It doesn't really have any of the sort of like the floats that the part had. The part I was checking on the scriptable object of the part, it has like health, speed, handling, right? 3 of them.
Yeah. So
And
yeah.
so the vehicle, I just need to add those to the vehicle, and then when it gets attached, I assume after this, I need to do some calculation to get like the cumulative stats of all the parts and add it to like the vehicle model, right?
So this is where I think it'd be good to have a conversation about what you think is best. So if you go back to the chassis, if you see that thing that says stats SO right there, public stats SO chassis stats.
Yep.
So that scriptable object, if you open it, is where there's like ints for speed, handling, and health. That the only reason I ever made that was because I thought maybe we were gonna like kind of customize, like we might have like special, like variables that we want, and and so we want to make like a separate object as opposed to it being generic. But to be honest, this seems maybe a little verbose. So if you want, you could sort of just eliminate this concept entirely and just hard put the numbers into the chassis scriptable object and the part scriptable object. They both share this root stats scriptable object as like one of their properties. So you could just take all of these fields, turn them into floats if you want, or ints, and then fucking throw them into the into their like constituent parts or scriptable, chassis scriptable objects. Going back to the model thing for a second, my envisioning was kind of like this. The only thing that is synced is the IDs. So that is the only thing that everybody knows, is that these part models and these chassis models just have the ID for what part it is or what chassis it is. And then by that, because every client has all the scriptable objects on it, they know the stats. So like if I, am the driver, I know all the stats because I know all the IDs, right? But you might want to do more dynamic shit with the stats. You may want to like adjust you might want to like provide I don't know, like a buff or a nerf to a part stats because of some status effect or something like that. Like, you build your vision for how you think this middleware could work. In which case, you might want to sync either all the part stats in the part model, so like that gets synced as a part of that model, you know? Or you do it after the fact and you combine all the stats into some like global stat or something like that, and you can push and pull that thing. It really just depends on how much control you want. You kind of get what I'm saying, though? It just depends on how much control you want. You kind of get what I'm saying, though? About, like, the difference between just keeping it static in the scriptable objects or, like, transferring that static data into a dynamic environment in, like, the part models.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand this.
Oh,
so,
okay,
yeah, so, say... You said only the driver have access to some of the stats?
So let me rewind for a second really quick. Right now, right? We have these static scriptable objects for parts and cars, right? Which is where all the information about them exists. Their names, their stats. It's all in these static scriptable objects, right? So what is currently getting synced is the IDs of these scriptable objects, because each of them have an ID, right? So if I add a part to the vehicle's loadout, right now, all that's getting added is the reference to its ID, right? Like, oh, it's this part, right?
Okay.
What that means is it's the responsibility of somebody to take that information about like all the parts that exist and then make sure that they handle the stat. Like they got to grab the stats from the static things, right? So there's no like make sure that they handle got to grab the stats from the there's no like the parts are in the it's getting synced, you know, and then it goes back into static world.
Okay, so pause here.
Yeah.
So which means that okay, say if client A attached a part to the chassis.
Yeah.
And client B, because that the part ID is synced, he knows okay, so this part is attached to this vehicle.
Yeah.
So on his local side, he gets that information, and basically if he wants the stats of the current vehicle after the parts are attached, he needs to do the calculation locally.
Yeah, he would do that, right? Like it would be, you could make like a mono behavior that just like, you know, still listens to the same event, right? Like when something gets attached, he'll calculate it in his own local environment. There's no like stats that are getting synced. It's just we know what parts are on the car, and if the stats are never going to change about these parts, then that's all the information we really need. I guess what I'm saying is that might not be cool. You know, it might be worth, well, okay, let's, instead of just packing the ID in here, like let's also pack the stats, because we can. Like we know when whoever's attaching the part here, right? They know what the stats are, right? Because they know what part they're attaching. And so we can have 3 other properties that are like the stats or whatever, and include that in the part model, right? Just to have it, you know, if we want. And because maybe there is a situation where like, okay, this rocket engine has 100 speed, but like after it gets used, it goes down to like 50 or something, right?
Right.
And we would want to do that, you know? Yeah. But like that might also not be the case. It's kind of what, you know, I initially just built this to be lightweight, but like we might want it to be just more flexible, and adding 3 floats is not a big fucking deal, especially because they only get synced when they change. So it's like,
Right.
you know, we have room that we can add. It's just whether or not you want to do that.
Something about authority, though, when we talk about, you know, changing these floats or stats on the part, is there going to be any similar concerns with authority, similar to how I was like, you know, trying to deal damage to other players, and it wouldn't let me because of authority and shit like that.
Yeah, so I had this issue with the fucking parenting of the parts of the car to begin with. The thing is with authority, the car is never owned. You can own the real-time transform individually. So the important thing is that if you own the real-time view, like the parent real-time view, then you are blocking any request to edit any data anywhere on the thing, right? But you can own like the transform and leave the view unowned, which is nice. Like, thank God Normcore allows for that, right? So basically cars will always be unowned. They will never be owned. I think the only thing that'll ever really be owned in the game is the player, right? So that you don't, you know, and then probably when we do Get Set Go, there will be like a master client that runs the game master, you know? And while he is connected to the lobby, he will probably own the game master. He'll be like, so that there are no requests like made and like people are updating scores and shit. It's just that one client is like the master client. And that's the way we'll like sort of have like server authority basically. But I don't really
What if that player leaves?
We'll just have to migrate it. We'll just say like, okay, well that player left, so once they leave, like we get the disconnect event, and we'll pick the next highest client ID, and we'll just say, or the next lowest client ID, and just say, all right, now you're the owner. So yeah, it's like it is a weird thing. Like it's the whole ownership thing threw me for a total loop, but now when I understand that you don't need to make something owned, and a lot of times it's like better not to. Yeah, we don't need to worry about that. We'll just we'll like the things that we just have to make sure is that whenever we like add, like see how there's no like model request ownership call before I add this thing, like that's very important, so that like because we don't need to do that, and because it's unowned.
So this is basically similar to like an in-scene dictionary, sort of like how I set up the HP system, right? So all the cars are essentially unowned, neutral scene objects that anybody can touch.
Yeah,
but when you drive, you own the transform of it.
That's right. Yeah, it's exactly right.
Okay.
Right. So if we and then we can make decisions on how we want to do. I think it's good to consider a standard for like, let's say we had vehicle combat, and I shoot your vehicle, right? It's probably better to make it optimistic for the person who shot the vehicle, right? So if I shoot that vehicle, I update its health, right? As opposed to the client who's getting shot updating their own car's health or something like that, right? So it's like there's some things to just wrap your head around, but it makes sense.
Do we want health bars on the vehicle? Is that what we're saying?
No, I don't really look. I think we have far more complicated questions that we need to answer really simply if we're going to deliver this game on time. Get Set Go still needs to be made, and Get Set Go as a race requires like some components to it. And you know, like fuck, like that thing is you know, vehicle combat could be like a deep, large sandbox that we could explore over time. But for now, I like the idea that we have combat on these players, and the players do things, and then the cars just kind of handle themselves, right?
Yeah, so I'll remove health from whatever stats.
I think so. And I think if we just build confidence in your implementation, like exactly how it works, you know?
Okay.
And build confidence in the way that you can add stuff to it, you know? Because I think at the end of the day, like, adding a health component is going to be as simple as, all right, guys, we're going to add fucking... we're going to add a new field to this model called health, and then a new field to the scriptable objects called health.
I wish it's as simple as that.
Well,
it also has to tie into the projectiles and everything like that.
Well, yeah, like in terms of the
yeah.
actual execution of it, yeah, sure. We have to create like a system for like what happens when you die and what, you know. But the data itself, like you're not gonna wall yourself into a corner with the data layer.
Yeah. Yep. That's fair. Yeah, we also have to, if we were to do that, we also have to think about, you know, all the colliders.
Yeah.
When players on the car, right, the projectiles, they hit the car, and you know, the players is like inside of the fucking colliders of the car. So like, which is the hitbox for the car? What is the hitbox for the player?
Yeah.
Like all that shit.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I feel comfortable just like ditching it for now. Like,
Yep.
just not having it.
Yeah.
And have, you know, the combat of the player determine to some extent how well the race goes. For example, if the driver's knocked out, you know, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But yes, jumping between vehicles right now. Yeah, I just need to have one character controller that's there at all times.
Yeah.
For me to comfortably be like, okay, I'm going to grapple onto this car. Because in the current state, if we're switching character controllers, this is an issue.
Yeah, it is. I mean, here's the thing, KT. Like, I don't really have the time to handle trying to fit the stabilizer issue. I may get that time at some point, but I know I don't have it right now, and if I'm going to stay on track. So our options are really twofold. You know, it's either like we figure it out and we bank on the fact that we're going to be able to figure out this sort of stabilizer issue so that this, like, because the fucking Unity character controller's just like not cooperative with parenting, right? Option number 2 is we go into the Unity character controller and figure out why it's not cooperative with parenting and fix that.
Does it even let us? Like,
I don't even know. Probably. I wouldn't imagine it's probably not a hashed thing. And problem number 3 is option number 3 is we tried kind of what we were trying previously, which is we just find a solo character controller that we can comfortably work with that accepts parenting, and find a solo comfortably work with, and you know, like, works the way that we want it to work. So it's like, that's part of the challenge. And I don't really know what to do about that at the moment. My sort of thought process is like, okay, well, if I get enough work done and we fix like the other things and we like get set go going and all these things, like we can like maybe just like address it. But yeah, I don't know.
Right.
It's like it's a tough one.
Mm.
But it also is just causing a lot of annoying problems that like we wouldn't want to build around, you know? Like you have to
Yeah.
turn off grappling and all these things.
Yeah, it's like it's creating stuff. It's creating work that I know that we wouldn't want in the case that this is fixed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to like rethink a lot of mechanics because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially. And like that's not good.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I don't know what to say. It's a tough situation. I thought I had maybe figured some things out with execution order and that kind of shit, and it seems like there's something there. I just couldn't really go down the rabbit hole, basically.
Okay.
So like I don't know. I feel like I may have tried this at one point. I don't actually remember.
So it is the character controller that's fucking it up.
Yeah, well, essentially the character controller is it's got like it doesn't like being parented, so it doesn't follow a car if it is parented.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really listen to the relationship.
Yeah.
Because it probably only
figured.
calculates its position in world space, always.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense, right? Fair enough.
Yeah.
If we could literally just somehow change its relationship to local space, I feel like that is literally
How do I even edit this?
I don't even, let me look up if you can. Like,
Maybe there's an asset that, is just identical to the Unity character controller, but with parenting.
So the character controller is mainly used for third-person, first-person player control that does not make the use of rigid body physics. Yeah. Fine-tuning your character controller. Yeah, hints. Yeah, it's like a because it says a physics-based character controller. So it's like part of physics, I think. First, third-person character application. User's character or avatar usually needs some collision-based physics that doesn't fall to the floor. In 3D physics, you can configure character physics with and control the character controller. Type of behavior can be created using character controller. This controller gives a character a simple capsule-based collider, which is always upright. The controller has its own special functions to set the object's speed and direction. But unlike true colliders, a rigid body is not needed, and the momentum effects are not realistic. Character controller cannot walk through static colliders in a scene, and so will follow floors and be obstructed by walls. It can push rigid body objects aside while moving, but not be accelerated by incoming collisions. This means that you can use the standard 3D colliders to create a scene around which you walk, but not limited to realistic physical behavior on the character itself, which should be great. Skin width, 2 colliders can penetrate each other. Step offset, know that. This offset, this will offset the character capsule collider in world space and will not want effects.
There are a lot of character controllers that I see in the store that has ground snapping. It's like it allows you to stick to the ground.
I don't think we want that.
We don't want that.
Well, sorry, explain it. I mean, I think I know it because I think we had that previously. I actually think I actually have it a little bit with the GSG character controller.
Right. Yeah, now that I think about it, because we're doing this manual sync. Wait, why do we not want that?
Well, I mean, it's just like we don't need it. Like, you don't need to snap the character to the ground. We just need to make sure he doesn't fall through it, and it would. I think it would create weird.
No, but if we like have this, if we have the character controller handling sticking to a moving platform, we don't need stabilizer or parenting anymore.
Yeah, but that's not what it is. I know we've tried this, and it doesn't work in the way that you think. Because here's the core problem. It's the reason why I think this doesn't work, and it didn't work with the last one that we did, is because those platforms were being moved in update. Their positions were being updated in update, whereas the position of the vehicle is updated in fixed update. It's a different timing window, and so what ends up happening?
What if we just change that?
I've done it.
Change the character controller.
I did that. I did that, and I actually did it with the stabilizer first. I said, "Oh, just change the stabilizer to fixed update, and you don't fall off the car anymore," and it works. Except it looks like shit because fixed update is not the same as update. It's not the same timing window. So you're getting all these transform updates that are happening basically not in no relation to your frame rendering. Mm-hmm. So it's like all shaky. Like your whole screen is like you're in like an earthquake. It actually looks like it's like low frame rate almost.
Right.
And so the way you think like, oh, let me get around that is like, let me just lerp these values, right? Like, how about we just lerp it, smooth it out. Mm-hmm. And I was fucking around with that, but I didn't get quite long enough into that problem to potentially solve it. But my instincts were telling me it was like, well, if I'm lerping it, you're still end up with the same issue where you're gonna like kind of fall behind it to an extent, basically, because like you're catching up with it slower and slower and slower every time because you're trying to lerp it. And so I just it seemed like it wasn't really working computing in the way that I wanted.
But that was the last tool though. There are some other tools that might run on fixed update.
But what I mean though is that I envision that they won't. I mean, I could be wrong though.
Yeah.
There's probably physics-based ones that do, but like, I don't know. I just have a strong set. I don't know. I have a strong set. I mean, there's probably a way that this gets figured out, but. Whereas it's like contains moving platforms, which is cool.
Scripted, translated, platform sensor.
Wait, hold on. Scroll up.
Yeah.
The platform requires a collider that can interact with the player in a rigid body. The rigid body needs to be frozen in its rotation, and its gravity needs to be disabled. It needs to be set to kinematic since its movement is managed by the script.
GG's.
Yeah.
Go on.
I mean, you could possibly put that on the car and then sync that to the car, but that's the same thing. It's just like...
Yeah.
Or you just parent that platform to the car, and that's the magic bullet, right? That platform is parented, and so like it's not actually moving, but you know, yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, the Unity character controller is closed source. Never mind.
Delock the surface.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, here's the thing. Essentially, what we actually need, to be honest, what we actually need is a character controller that moves in local space. That's what we actually need.
Yeah. Dude, this one looks shaky as fuck.
Yeah.
Even from the dim.
Because what we need is because essentially we don't, the only different scenario that you're in, local space in world space, or local space at the base hierarchy is world space. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like local space is world space, but world space isn't local space. And so all we really need is a character controller that like moves in local space, so that when that space relationship changes, the nature of the character controller doesn't really change. It's just moving in a different space. And because changing space is literally just changing space. It doesn't change anything about movement.
Yeah.
It's just changing space. And so like we could like write a character controller or take a character controller out of the box that gives us everything we want and then just change the space of it if we can edit it and it's not closed sourced. Because like if you go to starter assets first person, that fucking character controller, whatever it is, I don't remember if this one is also closed source, sorry.
Mine not.
Because the one in PhysX is closed source, but first person character controller.
It's definitely not.
Well, okay, that just might be the move. Just like, cause you can just trust Unity shit to work, you know. It's not gonna like work weirdly, you know. Like the third party stuff to me is sometimes just too overcomplicated. Like we just need a character controller that's got a capsule collider, detects the ground, can move, can jump, can have grounded checks. Like that's all we need. Like we don't need to reinvent the wheel, you know. And so like I don't know if this just kind of works. The third person one might be better. I have no idea. It might be camera related, which is a little annoying, but I don't know. Like whatever, and then just change the space of it. You know, just instead of transform dot move, it's or transform dot whatever, it's transform dot local position dot move or whatever. And I like have a strong hunch that would be fine.
Yeah, thing is, a lot of character controllers, they don't just move your transforms. It's like if they have rigid body and it's at physics based,
Yeah.
it's more like they're moving its rigid body, and that's the problem.
Right.
If we want a rigid body, the rigid body doesn't like parenting. It's not the character controller because the character controller is just moving it.
It's not 100% true though. The rigid body in the character controller that we currently have is not a normal one. The way that Unity's does it is it's different. It like doesn't actually like influence things in the same way. I don't know. I've read the docs on it, and it's hilariously confusing because it's kinematic. So it's not actually. That means it doesn't actually like simulate physics and compete for physics. When a rigid body, you could have kinematic rigid bodies that are parented all day long. That means it's not going to fight for authority over the transform. So, as long as that character controller has the same dynamic, it will be fine. Case in point, your player is parented to the stabilizing buffer when when we had it previously. So now I know that stabilizing buffer doesn't have a rigid body, but it's not quite the same. Your instincts are right though. There are character controllers that do fuck things up because they are physics based and the rigid body is live and it's doing all that shit. But so yeah, I don't know. Maybe the solution is just to get the first person character controller from Unity, edit it, and give it a whirl.
Okay. Let me look at this. Move. I guess it's in the locomotion. Right here. There we go.
It could be on the locomotor too. Yeah, it's a possibility.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's actually in the dynamic. It's not in the dynamic move provider. It's in the locomotion mediator, I think.
Yeah.
Or actually the transformer. It's the one that below it, the XR body transformer. It's weird.
Why is it so convoluted? What the fuck? Holy shit. Okay, let me try to understand that. I just want to see one character controller move call.
I think it is there in the
Yes.
transformer.
Really?
That's where it says, you use character controller in the...
Where does it move it? Oh.
Alright, if you go up, well, just see where the character controller's referenced.
Is it even referenced in this? I don't think so.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's in the inspector, so.
Oh, it is. Oh, you can just not use it.
Yeah, that just means you're not gonna move.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure. You can try, actually. I can't remember how it works, but...
If I don't check this, and it still moves, does it mean it's also a problem?
Well, I don't think so, because I don't think it means you can jump or anything. Maybe.
Let's see. I can still move.
Okay.
I can still jump.
I don't
Wait,
know.
why am I fucking jumping my heel handle?
I don't know.
That is bizarre. Okay, I might have fucked something up. That's not good.
Okay, well, I guess my advice would be, get on a car and drive it and try and move around.
Once I turn it on, I can no longer rocket jump with these modes.
Okay. Yeah, my advice would be just get on a car, try and walk with it unchecked.
Okay.
And because I don't mind keeping the parenting there per se. Yeah, okay, it's a little annoying for like if we're trying to destroy the car or somebody leaves or something like that. But it's like that's not the end of the world. You got to make sure you turn off the get GSG controller. Well, no,
like,
you got to turn it off on the car.
I know, like, but what are you trying to see?
I'm trying to see if it works. If it works, like, when you're driving. Because the character controller is the thing that's kicking you off, technically. So if your movement is determined by the XR body transformer, as opposed to the character controller, then... No, turn that off. Turn the other one off. There you go. Turn both off.
It's already bouncing.
Oh, there's it. Yeah, there you go. Can you even move?
I can move.
Doesn't really look like you're moving. Oh, never mind. All right, you gotta make sure you're fucking.
No, it's.
No. Okay, hold on. Just go back on the car.
Fuck my hand first. Okay.
Turn off the character controller and. All right, then scroll down.
Scroll down.
There's a capsule collider somewhere. Turn that off. All right. Now try.
I'm moving. Now it's probably back up again because I grappled accidentally. Oh wait, it's not. Okay.
All right. Then look in the XR body transformer. I can fucking all look in it. There's may or may not be a way to change it for local position. I mean, if there is, I mean because what's probably happening is that it's just only moving you in world position, right? So if you don't move, you don't move. But in local position, then you would move with the car. Because the
Object used to perform movement that is constrained by collision.
XR body transformer. Let's have a look. There's a body position evaluator. I don't even know what the fuck that is, but we'll have a look at it. Alright. Behavior that manages the locomotion via transformation of an XR origin. There we go. Love that. XR body transformation. Okay. So that's the actual, it's like there's an interface for that. Struct order for information. Alright. IXR transformation. The XR origin, choose transformation. Setting this property at runtime also relinks to a new origin. Equals value. Initialize movable body. XR origin. Link constrained manipulator. Okay. So our origin, position evaluator, we don't currently have one on there. Transfer first value transformation dot apply. Is this field accessible? I have no idea. Wait, sorry.
Link to this.
Huh. Okay, that's probably not right, but figuring it out. Alright, so that's what the struct is, I guess. There's a help URL. Object used to perform movement that is constrained, optional, maybe none. Object that determines the position of the user's body. If set to none, this computer will estimate the position to be the camera position projected onto the XZ plane of the XR origin. Okay, that's interesting. Is there a way to get this evaluator? Do I even know what it is? Be like hanging cameras with. Maybe a look player. Nope. Camera offset. Nope. Okay, interesting. Body. Perform mute, maybe none. Okay. Ooh, using dynamic position body, movable body, linked list, order. Okay, it's a linked list. Cool.
It's all the same thing.
XR origin. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Transformations queue. First value transformation apply, movable body. Use a transformation to be applied during the next updates. Transformations are applied sequentially based on ascending priority. Transformations within the same priority are applied during the order which they were queued. Each transformation is removed from the queue after it's first applied. Transformation that will receive a call in the next value. value determines when the. Okay, yeah, fine.
It's gotta be the character controller in the access store. I think it's do this.
Hold on.
It has to.
Hold on. A second. XR origin.
Any luck?
Yeah, kind of.